Today, Rinpoche began the section in the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment called How to Develop the Spirit of Enlightenment. So once again, we'll be looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. Nipasem de GP. NGK.
NGK the cause angatengore.
Dragian disco. Okay, so we're on page 21 in the second volume of the English. Yeah, it's the actual book that people bring with them. We actually have a couple of them up here, though. How many second volumes do we have up there? Does anybody know? Let me see what we got. I see some new faces. They're all volume ones. Yomari Rinpoche. We'll have to get some soon. Anybody wants to donate some packs? If anybody wants to look along, a couple people who have books, maybe you can give one book to these guys or something.
Thank you.
All right. Now we've got that. Page 21. Lobsang.
Yeah. That don't know what that also the Lari Chimba the Chimba Chungundi Chenmo Song Yuaris.
That's it.
Or the Chimba Karsa Chungu Dandi, the Sanata, and the Chimba Chibukadu lady Yuaris.
That's it.
Chimba Chibutala, Tejin Saji, Tejin Jugo Senja Gona Temba, Senji Bitu, Senji Jubal Habitu, Saji Somarba.
That's it.
What the Song Nanda, Senji Bitu, the lady Marba.
That's it.
Yeah.
So in Lama Tsongkhapa's text, the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, we find the explanation of the pathways for beings of three capacities. We find the section on training the mind in the stage of the path shared in common with beings of small capacity, training the mind in the stage of the path shared in common with beings of medium capacity, and then training the mind in the stages of the path for beings of great capacity. So we've already completed the sections on the stages of the path for beings of small and medium capacity, and now we've arrived at the section on the stages of the path for beings of great capacity. So when we look at Lama Tsongkhapa's own outline of this text, we'll find that he presents three categories at the beginning to explain the major topic, which is training the mind in the stages of the path for persons of great capacity. So the first topic is showing that developing the spirit of enlightenment is the only entrance into the Mahayana, so showing that bodhicitta is the only entrance into the Mahayana. The second category is how to actually develop bodhicitta, how to develop the spirit of enlightenment. And then the third category is how to learn the bodhisattva's deeds after developing the spirit of enlightenment, what one does as a bodhisattva after one develops bodhicitta. So these are the three categories, and now we're currently in the section number 2, how to develop the spirit of enlightenment, and we're right at the beginning of it on page 21, as I said in the English. Less so. So here, this is called how to develop the spirit of enlightenment, or how to develop bodhicitta. And when we look at what bodhicitta is defined as, or what bodhicitta is, It's wishing to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. So this is what the spirit of enlightenment, or bodhicitta, refers to, and this category is called how to develop that mind.
Shangju Sen Yang Yu Rinpoche Nipache, Shangju Sen Yula Jebi Tse Sombaje, Chugi Zunsul, Sajeje Dingdua, Sajeje Ro, Sajeje Nanda Tambo, Ne Jukangla Tene Chewatala, Ne Jenjele Jukangla Tene Chewatala, Jentang, Jutang, Totang. Or the song here, song on Tombo change the Jawas, change the Jawas. Chance and that is a matter of also. And did dig Saban Yoga Chivala sat on Ludo so, Jam out of a chain, Water. And then dig Saban Town, Nag Saban to Jushabala Tene, Jan, Chuludon Susuna, and when you were young, what then that was one of these.
So, when we look at the how to develop the spirit of enlightenment, it's broken down into 4 categories. First, the causes. How to develop the spirit of enlightenment depends on certain causes to arise. The stages of training in the spirit of enlightenment, the measure of producing the spirit of enlightenment, and how to adopt the spirit of enlightenment through its ritual. So this first category, how the spirit of enlightenment depends on certain causes to arise, there are 3 categories under that main heading. The development of the bodhicitta through the 4 powers, development through the 4 causes, and development through the 4 strengths. So these are the 3 categories to explain how bodhicitta depends on causes to arise. So the first category refers to the development of the spirit of enlightenment through conditions. So what are conditions? Conditions are what allow for something to be produced. So for instance, when we look at a rice seed and the sprout that it produces, the conditions are the water and the earth and the light and so forth that allow for the sprout to arise. So these are what conditions refer to in this sense. Then Gatsi Yure, Dun.
True.
The Jayan Sheba Drew Yure?
Jayan Sheba Saji what the Drew Tigore.
Ale.
Tatakatul Kuamara to Yetan, Kuara Katul Saji
Lesser.
That Thomas Saji to what they and
Ale. Then
Jan Gillet and the Chuatala and the Sajin to send a Jindoje. Tombo, Jan Jiganon, Tomodere, Jan Gillet Tunes, Jan Gillet Tunes, Jan Gillet Tune, Sanji Shansan Jito, Sanji Mashaba Ranki Tuan, Yichebale, ne Tubala Dene, ne Kala Nebata Shubi, Shanchutan Tuchu Unyane, sanje was tambur ta jenjig nan tambute jenjig nan tambute sa sanje de shanju samba to sanje de shansan to lo ne ba chiwo ta ne ba to sanje me ba ta to sanje me ba da ne rang thwa ane thwa yi che ba la ne ane tuba la tene kala ne ba ta shubi shanchu tene tuchu nya ne sanje was tambres what the shanchu de shira ge ne ba chibun do sa ne ti chen she ne ane shanchu ju de sanje on ge ju ares what the chen je na tambres
Ne Rinpoche, the Jayan Sheba Sache, the Kabiare, the Sache, the Sache Drew, the Chen Sache Drew.
Drew non ta tambure and bone jenure.
Okay. So we have how the spirit of enlightenment depends on certain causes to arise, and then there are the three categories that were just mentioned. The development of spirit of enlightenment through the four conditions, the development of the spirit of enlightenment through the four causes, and the development of the spirit of enlightenment through the four strengths. So here, this first category, the development of the spirit of enlightenment through the four conditions, Jayan Sheba's outline shows that there are 6 different points that are being presented there. So we find that those points then we'll find in the body of the text, but Jayan Sheba states that there are 6. So when we get to the first category, we find the development of the spirit of enlightenment through the four conditions. And then we'll find 4 points that are made here. And Rinpoche said that the first point, according to Jayan Sheba's outline, begins here. And he'll let me know where the stop points are as we get through each of the points. So, because I don't know if they correspond with the 4 or how it goes, so we'll see as we go. Rinpoche quickly listed them, but I wasn't able to translate it without having the text in front of me. So we'll do them one by one, because it's possible then for me. So the first category is the development of the spirit of enlightenment, according to Jayan Sheba, and it says the development of the spirit of enlightenment either by seeing yourself the inconceivable power of the Buddhas or Bodhisattvas, or by hearing about them from a reliable person, and then thinking, this enlightenment in which they abide or which they pursue is very powerful. So this is the first condition that we find presented on the development of the spirit of enlightenment. And it's by seeing the unbelievable abilities that the Bodhisattvas and the Buddhas have that make you want to strive to have those abilities as well. So this actual experience of or understanding of what the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas qualities are, whether you see them yourself or you hear about them from somebody you find reliable, these things serve as a condition for your wish to also develop the spirit of enlightenment and also achieve Buddhahood. So this serves as the first condition. Hearing about these qualities, seeing these qualities for yourself. So this is category number 1 in the text, but also falls into category number 1 of Jayan Sheba's text, which is a separate commentary that's never been translated into English. Just as a side note to anyone new, we keep saying Jayan Sheba. Rinpoche has a commentary. It's called the 4 Interwoven Commentaries. There's 4 commentaries simultaneously given on the Lamrim Chenmo in one text. Jayan Sheba is one of the commentators and presents an unbelievable outline of this text throughout that commentary. So Rinpoche is using that as a tool to explain this text. So when you hear Jayan Sheba, that's a separate text that is just in Tibetan that we're using to help explain this. Okay, Digsan.
Tetabi Tontu Majans, Sanji Shansen, Totugarang, Mozu Toma, the Tuba Majans, Tomba the Tuba Menaya, and the Lana maybe Shanjule Zambi, Denu Nebana, and the Sanji Shila Mune, Sanjiba, so what the Jeniba dress, Jeniba. Tetabi Sanji Shansen, Mozu Toma, the Tuba, the Tenemeba ina. Lana maybe Shanjule Zambi, and the Pashama Anju in Yada, and Pashatane, and the Sanji Shit Mabajene, Jene, and Shanju Sanji, Jenny Batteries.
And the point of departure, the donagare rimche, the indicate the dits kinsa, the nipa.
Tabi Tontu me Sanji Shansan Ngozu Tonga to Tibetan Menaya and a Pachatane. Pacha Bugulu and Trasa, Pacha to Stene, and Pacha Nalu, Sanji Gishete, Nevachi was on Yorota. Tontu Mejan, Lana Maybe Shanju, Sele Zambi, Denu Nebanas, and the Pacha Renji.
Deni nepa na, the donagare.
Pacha Yen, Ging Shi, Nye, and the Sanji Gishete. Ishila Mabajine, or that Sanji Gishete Abishira Res on Mabajine, Tejas in the Sanjim Kadiniba Res.
Then the giant Sheba Tambo.
Niba. Tambu Damatsaro, Taniba, Teta Bitontu Mejan, Lana Mabi Shanju Le Zambi, Denu Nebanas, Shanju Kanju Tenju to Nebana. And Sanji Ishila Mene, Sanji Bazote, Jenny Badres.
Okay. The giant Lamatsun Kappa Sache Nipa Dang Giant Sheba Sache Nipa?
Janji Saji Nipa, the Lamatsun Kopano, Janji Sabazum, Achumare.
Okay.
Hotene Yobatele, Saji Dimro.
Okay. So now we get to category number 2 of Jayan Sheba's outline. And here is referring to relying on texts. So it says, although you may not have heard of such power in this way, you can develop the spirit by listening to the scriptural collections, which take unsurpassed enlightenment as a point of departure, and then aspiring to the sublime wisdom of a Buddha. So you can then rely on the great scriptural collections, the texts, the pronouncements of Lord Buddha, the Khensur, the Tanjur, the authentic Indian commentaries. And by listening to these texts and by relying on these texts, you can recognize what this unsurpassed enlightenment is, this enlightenment that there is no higher enlightenment than, and then you can aspire to that wisdom which is a part of that enlightenment, which is that enlightenment. So, so by relying on this text and learning of this wisdom which is enlightenment, one will aspire to have that sublime wisdom. As well. So this is the second condition that causes one to develop the spirit of enlightenment, causes one to develop bodhicitta. Look at a lot of text of Disa.
Chen Nibaji, that's one about the rest. Chen Somba the Chuma Tujan, Ganju Danger, Anjul Tube Matujan, and Shansenji, Tanchu Nudu Nyawanas, Nyawatuanas. And the Shanju Sembi Chute, Sanji Temba Noya, Temba Mabachage, or the Nyakat Tuana, Chute Tabnebane, Sejen Badu maybe, Dunga Sewa Shebe, and Dagi, Shansenji Churindu, Neba Shai Shedo, and Naba Sanjedo, Jane, Sanje Batans, or the Somba. 네, 상지 간주된 주 안주 추마 투바 이나야 하는 대바 준비 추데 템바 노야게 네 노야게 내가 통바나 템바 냥도야 내가 통바나 냥 통바나 추데 상지게 템바 내바 이나 세제 몸을 팬도 줘버레스 된 노나 지금 뭐냐네 살다네 아니 대답이 추데 내바네 세전 봐도 maybe 동행 세와 시바 인비 손지게 temba neba ina 세전 봐도 maybe 팬도 그래 동행 가도 그래스 세와 시베 다게 샹센지 추 린도 neba 샤이셔스 다게 샹주 선비 추데 윤여린도 neba 샤이셔도 능해봐 생제도 냐네 생제 봐서 어때 송바들에
아니 this Sonchina Anja Guma son, dene Kandre, the Sonchina, the Semchen Mambo, the Dugnya se. Kandre Hakogudu, the Anja Guma son.
Tibetan Jimmy Chu, the Mabachande, Nega Tungu, Tibetan Jimmy Chu, Mabachage, Nyandayage, Tema Nuage, Nega Tungu, what then temba no so na ne yabu mare temba ne ba ina shira pendu chibure ne temba de ne bi che da ge shanshu ju de sen je ba shawo nya be o de sen je won kan ji yo res
ini kandre ha kogudu the sonchina anja goma son becha loma son then the Sanjay Demba ke Chenmo kandre ha kogudu gongyo me
tambi chu
then kandre
shanshu sen bi tambi chu no de yo shanshu sen bi tambi chu de ne me ba chan de de
okay
ne ku tong wo yo ro da ye da ge xie yan zhen yo ro
okay
tong nas o de chu no na ne yabu mare chu ne ba ina pendu chu bu re so ne sen ji
ale
o de da somba de lo
ale chishina ai the pure Rinpoche kan mambo yure ngamba yo mare yene de na bi chu ke Chenmo ha kogudu okay Tuchen Rinpoche gongyo me bachi so number 3 it got really loud. Number 3 is number 3 in the of the development of the 4 conditions, as well as number 3 in Jayan Sheba's commentary. So it says, although you may not have heard the teachings, you can develop the spirit by understanding that the excellent teaching of the Bodhisattva is about to disappear, and then thinking, I will definitely develop the spirit of enlightenment so the Bodhisattva teaching will remain for a long time, because the existence of such a teaching removes suffering from innumerable living beings. So here, even though you may not have heard the teachings in the Kangjur and the Tanjur, and may not have studied or heard teachings before, if you hear of the disappearance of this spirit of enlightenment, and the mere existence of it requires someone to develop it. And if it is on the decline, and there's a chance of it no longer being, this serves as a condition to inspire you to want to develop it yourself. So my question to Rinpoche is if you have never heard the teachings and you've never been to a teaching, you've never read a book, why would you think that the teaching would remove suffering from innumerable beings? So why would you think that they would be of any benefit or any of use need to not lose? What would inspire you? Rinpoche said maybe hearing from others, and we were both talking about the point that there are many Americans, for instance, that want to free Tibet and help the Tibetan religious tradition because they know it's valuable and they know that it's possibly on the decline, even though they're not Buddhists, but they see that as something that needs to be saved. So it's similar to that kind of idea, because I questioned it right when I read it, and I asked Rinpoche that question, how, if you haven't studied this, would you find the need to want to save it? And he said, hearing about it from others and seeing how it's inspired others and knowing that it's something valuable. And the way that you save this particular thing is by developing it. So this is number 3, the 3rd condition. So sorry about that extra commentary, but it just struck me.
Chu noba matong yang, dambi tenpa chenpi chu noba de matong yang, ju ngabi du tse ngaba res, du tse ngaba temu dang, ngosa meba dang, temu chewa, ngosa meba, tre meba, chadu dang, sana zu she che yu, nyomo ba she che yu, dun de ne, du tse de ne, nyerang ki shanshu chu du sen je bang, nye ba ka nas, tenda be de de le an tiba chembi shanchu chu sen ji pha ja ne nye tu dan ra je sen ji da kali khabres ne ba kana lana me be shanchu chu do sen ji ba ta che mes shanchu chu sen ji ba kana yong ma res nye rang sen ji ba de kombres reji tene yin so da ki reji sen ji na Jian Tibetan Buddhism ne, or the Ngan Shanshu to the Sangun ne, Shanshu San the Jeba ina, and then Jenda to a Nalmi Mebutane, San Jeba Yungres, Jian Tibetan Buddhism ne, San Jeba Gawa, San Jeba Gawa Tune, San Jeba the Jeba Wosa, Jeba Rendua, or the change of the Bazun is it.
So number 4. Although you have not seen the decline of the teaching, you think it is difficult to generate the spirit of enlightenment of even a Shravaka or a Prachika Buddha, or a hearer or solitary realizer, in these terrible times in which there is a preponderance of ignorance, shamelessness, lack of embarrassment, jealousy, stinginess, and the like. Then what need is there to mention developing the spirit of the highest enlightenment? If I were, at some point to develop the spirit of enlightenment, others would surely follow. Thus you generate the spirit of enlightenment through seeing the difficulty required to develop it. So you're inspired by its difficulty and recognition that others would want to do the same if you could do so yourself. So this is condition number 4. Diksan Rinpoche.
That senji jeju de ti tuan sheba ane tuan sheba de insare senji jeju de ti tuan sheba ni yoba senji jeju de ti tuan sheba de ma yong sare ta ti tuan sheba ne senji jeju ne so wa de ma le yong res ta senji jeju ne shangju jembo senji ba sheba sombe shangju tunde jeba was shangju ju de senji as de senji tanji ge do shangju gobon tunde jeba de le senji ba se gres senji tune shangju jembo senji ba sheji sombe shangju tunde jeba was senji tanji ge do teba chembe shangju toba shawo nyabe tunde jeba de le senji ba la gres ane jen gangi ne wate jen gangi sheba la jen gangi sheba wate shangchu tunde jeba jen gangi shega desina tena ma yang jen ge yang za ji yong duwa jen gangi sheba la tambo ane shangchu ju sen jibi jen de gangi shega desina 주주 전부 주주 모차와 통한 되네 야생제대 대답이 상주 다기 투버샤오 냐네 인라스 어데 젠강이 버튼 되는 오늘 가려요로 되는 담부들
Rinpoche, the giant Sheba, the Sache Drew, the Kabiyare.
사지 조도 다다는 레옹 사마르베
제파
디 된시바 된마 용사레 디 된시바들 사지 조도 데레드만로 디 된시바 생지비 디 된시바들라 생지비 주도 디 된시바 니로 생지비 주도 루차드네 ane 디 된시바들 양자 용도와 생지 주네如果senji kuna tenba senji bi chu de marbe lari shi mo gu yo ba senji bi chu de wo de le de marbe senji bi chu ne shangju jeng ba senji ba sheji sombe shangju tunde je ba wo senji ta ji ge don do shangju tu ban de ba de la senji ba so de se gres senji ba se se gres tombe je ta ni ba de le 오나 상주 돈을 집어들 젠 가르치 그러잖아. 양자 젠 해거도와. 젠 단다 젠 조든데 해된 사마르바. 젠 관계 쉐발라. 다음에 다음부터 라분도와. 추추 모차와나 통내스 상제의 상주 상바 속에 주주 모차와 안데 도수 통어 퇴내 야생제です안데 상제의 상주 상바들 안데 주주 남는 보대로 때 통내 안데 야생제데 대답이 상주 다그 토바 샤오냐네 어디 생제용 같이 요아레스 네바제 젠그리 카니 용다도 다마들 젠지 진사로 야전들 야지 용도와
Okay, then they drew the
인사마르베
they drew good somason.
니 니로 사송다 다무 생지 주네 샤주 좀 생지 제 손배 상주 돈도 제바오 산제바스 상주 돈도 제바스 담부지 네바데 상주 돈도 제바健康 기세거스나健康 기세바라 담보 추추 못사와나 통아 되네 야천제데 대답이 상주데 다게 토바샤오냐네 냐네 일라서 니바지 니바 라리 쳔도
Yine the Dru. Khensur. Lamrim Chenmo Jie yure. Jie.
젠지 친사로
Jie.
다야전데 마 어디 주는데 해용사래
Okay, so Rinpoche and I are just talking about where these 6 categories fall into, just as that separate aside.
자기 주세 안 되는데
So it looks like they're going to start next after this, because in the commentary there's 2 categories. First, the development of the spirit of enlightenment through the 4 conditions, and then how it arises from those 4 conditions. So the how it arises from their 4 conditions part is where we find the 6 categories. So hopefully it'll all fall into that. But the other categories, everything else we read through was correct. It was just the placement of the categories in the text that no one has anyway that was incorrect. So we'll see where it falls into here. So we finished the first category of the development of the 4 conditions. The next category is how the development of these conditions actually develops the spirit of enlightenment. So how it arises from these 4. So the first category is that after you see or hear about supernormal powers, you are awed, thinking, I will attain such an enlightenment, and then generate the spirit of enlightenment. So you recognize that these extraordinary powers are possible if you achieve the state of enlightenment, and that the state of enlightenment is a place where you can be of most benefit to all sentient beings. So your wish, the development, what you're developing is a wish to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. So when you see these extraordinary powers that you can develop by achieving Buddhahood, and recognize that how those will help sentient beings, you will wish to then generate the spirit of enlightenment. So this is the first category. After you see or hear about supernormal powers, you are awed, thinking, I will attain such an enlightenment, and then generate the spirit of enlightenment. Tambotsar.
Tambotsaro. 다 니바든 마 용도와健康 시발라 추추 담불라 추추 못사와 통아 퇴네 야생제데 대답이 상주데 다그 투바 샤우 냐네 일라서 어때 니바든 사마라
Le Sanje gi yunten membe tambo tepa je Tepa je? The Nipa?
Nipa de no what Nipa
ni chu matale.
Nipa 健康 shebala tambo chuchu ngosawa na 통아 퇴네 야생제데 대답이 상주데 다그 투바 샤우 냐네 나 생제바드레스
The Rinpoche, the Lamrim Chenmo chu kabiore. Ngatsu the nicha gochu.
니자 구지 집어래 되었다. 니자 구주래.
네네, the nipa nichu.
니바도 어디서 니바 배지 된사 말아.
Tambo chu. The nipa nichu matale. Yomarebe.
다 니바 된사 니바 추마와래.
Okay.
상제진에 된 예배. 동부 대바 제스.
Lesso.
전에 달라 돈을 제바오스.
Lesso.
어디 니바 된사 말아.
Okay. Then number 2 is through hearing about the good qualities of a Buddha from an instructor, you first develop faith and then arise a desire to attain these qualities.
그래서
Lesso.
다 손바 티젠지 템바 노바 조와 마즈네스 티젠게 템바도 마 논려야 냥려야 통네 된 마즈네 Teaching Temba, Nobanjo, Mazune, Sanji, Shela, Tunde Jibos, Sanji Temba Yansuna, what in Yakachibure, and then Saint Tajik, Sanju Tuba Shaoyane, Saint Jeongaji Ores, Tunde Jibate, De la Temba Manuna, and the Sanji Temba de Manuna, Long Temba, Tubi Temba de Yuba Ina Manuna, Saint Jeji Dunga Duba. Tongwang yue bes, and the same temper never ina, and the same doing it, car to gre, the wine gres, duba tongwang yue be, doing say shadow, me ba, yue me chance, doing say shadow, doing say shadow, the same jim can get the yours. Saint Jimmy change to the temper noba mazuba the race, temper noba mazuba the change in. And what the sensible change to what there is, sensible as you are. What there is, Tata Mainas, Tata Maina Wudo, Hingela Tene, Joashibatan Dus was what the Tama Numba Mazun sensible change the Jagures, Tamaina and Tata Maina. Wodo Hingela Tene, Shanju Sanjo Shibaton, Dujun Chanudus, less Sand Robert Chanudus.
Number 3, on finding the thought of the decline of the Mahayana teaching unbearable, you develop the desire to attain a Buddha's sublime wisdom. In regard to this last point, you see that if the teaching does not disappear, the suffering of living beings can be stopped. So even though your objective is indeed to remove suffering, nevertheless, the principal condition for the spirit of enlightenment arising is your inability to bear the fact that the teaching might disappear. Otherwise, this way of developing the spirit would repeat the explanation presented later on in the text of how the spirit arises in dependence upon compassion. So here, one is finding it unbearable to know that there's a decline, that the bodhisattva's, the spirit of enlightenment might disappear, which means that the Mahayana disappears, which means that there's a decline in the Mahayana teaching. So upon hearing this, you have this desire to attain this Buddha's sublime wisdom. It says, you see that if the teaching does not disappear, the suffering of living beings can be stopped. So even though your objective is indeed to remove suffering. So here, there's a slight difference. Your objective is to achieve the happiness for the sentient beings by the teaching not stopping. So it's different than compassion, because compassion would want there would be more suffering for sentient beings if there were no teaching. So that would be if you wanted to remove that suffering, that would be compassion, which is different. This is specifically recognizing that the teaching itself is on the decline, and that the teaching brings measurable happiness to beings. So the suffering of beings can be stopped if the teaching doesn't decline. So that's what is meant here. This is the point. It's a positive rather, I think, instead of the negative, if it's analyzed. Khensur Rinpoche.
Ta jiba tenba wa te jiba te sangdua, jiba tuanchi sente gombo tones, tuanchi sen shangju sente rota, shangju sente gombo shira yima tone, zu de gune, sanji la tunde jeba de sa. Jiba de tuanchi sente, shangju sente, ane jigen gombo shira de, shangju sente yul jigen gombo rota. Gombo de tone, zu de gune, de jian ne, gune, sanji la tunde jeba de, ne dagi sinjin tantric don sanji ko toba shawo nya tunde jeba de, sen jeba de, shangchu la tunde jebe gune jagis, sen jeba de, shangchu la tunde jebe gune jagres, sinjin tantric do shangchu toba shawo nya be tunde ki chane jagres, chedu shayu gune majaba thongos, chedu shayu gune majaba thongos. Senjiban Shendun She Yada Zubi Shangchun Dus, Senjiban Shendun She Yada Zubi Shangchun Dus, Senji second order, Jen Senji Tanji Tundo, Dag Sanji Kutuba Shao Nabe, Senji the Marbe. Shanchulu Tunde Jibichana, Senji the Yagures, Chidisha Jendun Chan Jagamares, Senji Bande, Shanchulu Tunde Jibi Gone, Jagi, Chidusha Jendun, Chidusha Yugone, Majaban Hongos, Chidusha Yugone, Majaban Hongosa.
Ale, the Senche Gitseni. Nudajan.
Chid Senji Ban Jendun Yada Shangchulu, Senji Seni Dagor.
Nudajan.
Modujan, Senji Ban Jendun Yada Shangchulu, what the teaching Senji Seni Dagor.
Lesso.
What did tell Hedata?
Lesso.
Senji Bat the Comba Tone, Tu de Gune, Sanjela Tunde Jeba de Senji Ban de Shangchulu Tunde Jibu Gune Jakis, and Chidisha Yugun Majakos, Shangchu Tunde Chane, Senji de Jagres, Chidisha Yugune, Jendun Jugun Majaban Hongos,
Jendun, okay, lesso.
Sanji Jendela, Sanji Jendela Teba Jambu Gune, Sanji Jendela Teba Jambu Gune, Sanji La Tunde Menas, Sanji Jambu Gune, Sanji Tua and Deba Mebaina, Tunde Mena, Rangi Tundruba, Shiva Jambi, Chubanzi Ludu Munites, Sanji Jendela Teba Jane, Teba Jambu Gune, Sanji La Tunde Menas, Sanji Yundela Jane, and Sanji La Tunde Mebaina, Rangi Tundrubala, Shiva Jambi Chubanziba, Shiva Jambi Chubanziba, Rajizi Dutu Maris, Rajizi, Shiva Jambi Chubanzibi, Rajizi Dutu Maris, Sanji Yundela, Teba Jambi Gune, Sanji La Tunde Yobaina, and the Rajizi Dutu Re, and Sanji Yundela Teba Jane, Sanji La Tunde Mena, and Rangi Tundrubala, Shiva Jambi Chubanzibi, Rajizi Dutu Maris, Madu de Shambatan Hinji Jambi Gune, Jendun La, Gobatone, Sanji Tundebi, Jendun Drubala, Shiva Jambi Chubanzimba, Tunujes, Shambatan Hinji, Nemashi Tintin Yong Shaban Hinji, what is later to Ah. Shambatan Hinji Jambi Gune, Jendun La Goba, and Jendun La Goba, and Shambatan Hinji Jambi Gune, Jendun La Goba Tone, and Sanji Tuzuna Jendun Yong Rang Yongota, Jendun La Goba Tone, Sanji Tunde Bene, Jendun Drubala, Shiva Jambi Chubanzeba do Nujes, and Rajizi do Nugres.
Rinpoche, the Shewa Jambi, the Nyanenle Deba.
Shiva Jambi Chubanzega, Netu Raja, Netu Raja to go there, Taba Jamba Tuson Digres and Shiva Nabajad.
Ale, okay.
Shiva Jambi Shambadan Hinji Jambi Gune, Jendun La, Gobatone, Sanji Tunde Bine, Jendun Dubala, Shiva Jambi, Chubanzimba do Nujish, Jendun Dubala, and then you don't know to so long, Lujan Jena, and the Jengi, Jenda do two Jambi San Luyo, or the two Mares, on the and Shambatan Hinji Jambi Gune, Jendun La, Gobatone, Sanji Tuban Debine, Jendun Dubala, Shiva Jambi Chubanzimba, Duba Nuchis, Jendun Dubala Shiva Jambi, Shiva Rani Taba Jamba Tuba Sanji, and Digris and Jujero, what the Netu Raja Zingero, what the Shambatan, Hinji Jambi Gune, Jendun La Gubatone, Sanji Tuban Debine, Jendun Rubala, Shawa Jambi Chuban Zeba, Do Nujes, Sanji Tundu, Sanji the Abujonsona, Shawa Jambi Chuban Zeba, Do Nugres.
Right, so.
Chunzing Hame, Do Munibisharosa, Chunzing Hame, Radu Jambi, Done, Shawa Chudin Zimbabwe. Ne Raji do two mares, Timel Yodro.
Right, so.
Dubi Shetan, Tunguji, maybe Sherosa. The Sute Kabundua.
Lamrim Mambo, Nigle, Mambo Lago,
College,
Shishin Tanda Ju.
yeah. Oh, Tanda Disanu.
The Jagore, that's good. The Kamachi.
The Chatan,
The Tambongi de la.
College,
Okay. Rinpoche wants to take a short break now, so I'll just remember everything the last 20 minutes. And we'll have snacks, and then we'll be back for the teaching. Thank you. Okay, so that is completes number 3. So number 3 deals with finding it unbearable to see the decline of the teachings, and how that if the teachings stay. So page 23 is where we are in English, if everybody wants to go back to that. So we're on page 23, and we're on number 4. We previously went through number 3, which recognized the decline of the teachings and not wanting to see that happen. And the decline of the Mahayana means that the bodhicitta is no longer. So on recognizing that, and on recognizing that if the teachings stay, then happiness will be produced. Then the suffering of living beings can be stopped. So one wants this to stay for that reason. It's different than compassion. And that's what the point that's made in there, to show the difference between having compassion for beings and wanting them to suffer, and knowing that that because this is here, then the suffering can be no longer. So that's number 3. Number 4, after you see how rare this most purposeful spirit is, you develop a desire to attain Buddhahood, spurred on principally by this awareness. So you recognize how rare the mind that aspires to enlightenment. Previously it showed how even rare the hearers and the solitary realizers realizations are, and then recognizing how difficult those are, it's very rare then to have this even more difficult realization, which is the spirit of enlightenment. So when we look at the Abhisama Alamkara by Lord Maitreya, we find that the spirit of enlightenment, or bodhicitta, is defined as mind generation, the desire for perfect enlightenment for the benefit of sentient beings. So this is the definition in the Abhisama Alamkara of this spirit of enlightenment. And it says, with regard to the 2 components of the spirit of enlightenment, the desire to attain enlightenment and the aim of the welfare of all beings, this 4th development of the spirit of enlightenment is established in terms of producing a desire to attain enlightenment, and not established in terms of the aim. So here, desire is for the sake of others. So the desire to attain enlightenment isn't for one's own purpose, it's for the purpose of others. And it says, without the desire to attain Buddhahood that comes from cultivating faith in a Buddha's good qualities, you cannot overcome the sense of contentment that thinks peace, nirvana, alone is sufficient to fulfill your own aims. The desire to attain Buddhahood on account of training in love and compassion and seeing the fulfillment of others' aims as a necessity can eradicate the sense of contentment that thinks your peace alone is sufficient to fulfill others' aims, but cannot stop the sense of contentment that thinks peace is enough for your own aims. Besides this desire to attain Buddhahood that comes from cultivating faith in a Buddha's good qualities, there is no other way to stop the sense of contentment that thinks your peace alone is sufficient to fulfill your own aims. Indeed, you do not need to overcome the sense of contentment that peace alone is enough. Indeed, you do need to overcome the sense of contentment that peace alone is enough to accomplish your own welfare. because one, Hinayana practitioners who are merely liberated from cyclic existence have only a partial elimination of faults and a partial knowledge, and thus lack the perfect fulfillment of their own aims. And two, these practitioners are liberated from the problems of cyclic existence, but not from the problems of peace. And then three, the perfect fulfillment of one's own aims, it is said, is a Buddha's embodiment of truth. So here, the hearers and the solitary realizers have not even fulfilled their own aims, because there's still a residue, there's still obstructions within their continuum, even if they are in nirvana. And this idea that sentient beings are still suffering, and the desire to free them all, is what keeps the bodhisattva, what keeps the great vehicle practitioner from falling into peace, falling into nirvana, a state of liberation, which is just static in the sense of it's just a status of nirvana without the desire to fulfill others' needs whatsoever. But by just aspiring to that level of enlightenment, one isn't even fulfilling their own aims because of the obstructions that are still present within their continuums. So that's the point that's being made here, and you see how rare this spirit of enlightenment is, and recognize it. And Rinpoche said here, when it says, sense of contentment that thinks nirvana alone is sufficient to fulfill your own aims. Here this is saying that the great vehicle practitioner has to get rid of the self-cherishing attitude. So the attitude which cherishes oneself alone has to be transformed into an attitude which cherishes others, because the definition of bodhicitta is the desire for perfect, complete enlightenment. So that means the complete enlightenment, Buddhahood, for the benefit of others. Let's make sure I covered everything. Let's go. So here you find, just in the body of the text also, almost the same, the definition that the Abhisamma-alamkara presents. It says, with regard the desire to attain enlightenment and the aim of the welfare of all beings. So the Abhisamma-alamkara puts those together, the desire to attain perfect enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. So there's 2 points that are made in that definition, and that's what Lama Tsongkhapa is pointing out here. Those 2 points that are made in the definition in the Abhisamma-alamkara. It's just not, doesn't say that. That's in Rinpoche's commentary. Dikson, Rinpoche. Rinpoche said number 4 is quite long and quite difficult, so he'd like to just go through it again.
Senjebande jendunshi yanda zubi shanshu de shibi senjebande shanshu la tundu jebi gune jagis senjebande senjan tangje gana zubi shanshu tuban debi chane jagres tundu ju gune jagis chedu shayu gune majagos senjebande jendunshi yanda zubi shanshu de jendungi shene jag masamaro chedu shayu gune majaban hongos Chedisha Yugana Majaba Nongos, Ta Sanji Juenten la Teba Jane, Sanji Juenten la Teba Jan Yugune, Sanji Juenten la Teba Jan Yugune, Sanji la Tundu Menas, Sanji Juenten la Teba Jan Yugune, Seja Tanji Sanji Gun Tuba Shao Nyabe, Tudu de Mena, Rangi Tundruba la. Shiva Jambi Chuban Zambade Dutu Mares.
Okay.
Rangi Tandubala, Shiva Jambi Chuban Chugres and Jero, Timeba Zunjero. What day Shiva Jambi Chuban Zambade Dutu Mares. Sanji la Yunde, Sanji Junetella, Tebajan Yugune, Sanji la Tundu Yuna Duture, Tundu de Mena Rajin Dutu Mares. Tundu Mena Rang Tundrubala, Shiva Jambi Chuban Zevarajin Tejirwada. Madu Tes, Shambadan Hiji Jambi Gune, Shambada Mashi Tintin Yong Shamba, Hiji Jambi Gune, Jendula Gubatone, Jeng Tundalawate, and Gubatone, Sanji Tuban Debene, and Jendun Rubala, Shiva Jambi Chuban Zeba do Nujes. What did the Besson Shonson Rajin do tourists? Do Nujes. Choosing Hame Madukos, Shiva Jambi Chuban Zeba Tegi, what the Rajin do to Mares. Choosing Hame do Munubi Shetans. Tunguji Jen, maybe she rose, Tunguji, ne, Jusen Jenda Kuya Mares. Radon Drubala, Shiva Jambi, Chuban Zibolo, do Maguba on Metes, Radon Jamba Drubala, Shiva Jambi, Chuban Zibolo, do Maguba Mar, do Gugres, do Maguba on Mete, Koal Joa Sanji, Temen Las, Koal Joa Sanji, Temen Yatudonaje, Koal Joa Sanji, ne Temen La. Pomba tuba shuro le mebes ne to donaje zole pomba shuro atan tuba shuro madu yo mares chun kuze mare te kude mares chun kanga seyo mare shidi seyo mare ne tuba kama zu taje chemba mares shuro le mebe radio pansun soba mebe shetans temel radio pansun soba yo mares radio pansun soba tijen madu yo mares Maybe shut down. Tada Sibi Gobale Tayans, Tada Sibi Gobale Tayan, she Gobale, Madrid Shatans, Temebatu, Sibi Gobale Tagar Coapontugre, Yomopontugro, Tayan, she Gobale Tutu Mares, she be Silla Menation, Hiji Shella Menetans, don't need to be sure to get Kuy Tal Meneba Shigres, and Hiji Chematege. Shetal Meneba, Shetango to race, what does the lady Mudwe? Tada, Sibi Gobale Tayan, she Gobale Madrid Shetans, Neturanje to so, Sibi Gobale Tate, and then your Mombonsare, Quaponsaro. Sibi Gobal the Tayo, Ponsares, she Gobale Toyo Mares, Rajin the Ponto Maro. She Gobale. Madrid Shetan Radin Ponson Sobane, Sanji Chuji, Kuson Bicheros, Radin Ponson Sobate, Sanji Chogo, Sanji Goda Chogoda Zoguni Marbe, Chogoda Zoguni, Chogodele, and Eshi Chogoda Wonikus, Nasanji Tuji, Tanji Jam Ami Juetan, and Nachek to Godeni Marbe, Godeni the Radin Ponson Sobico. Sanji Chujuko Yemicheros, Chujuko da Hijuko Wonyako, Wonyako Tango Dent Marbe, and Yemicheros, Tena, Jusen Tishana, Sanji Jun la Tebajane, Sanji Jun la Tebajane, Jenun Tashu, Rangiton Rubalan, Saji Toba Memronto, Tona, Temeto Modubi, Chenmo, what the Tena, Sanji Jun la Tebajane, and Jenun Tashu, Rangiton Rubalayan, Sanji Toba Memoronto, Tonsuna, and what the Sanji Yan Timelman Rumaris, Temeto Modubi, Chenmo. What about Nabareta Naba?
Ngapa?
Naba, what about the
Ngapa? Jib, okay.
Naba,
okay, Dixon. So, number 4, Rinpoche, Triwa Cheek, you're the Jipa Kutsona, the Jipa Gutso, the Ni, the Semche Ni, the Sanjay Kopan tu dang semchen dun. Ni the kabiare.
Shiva Jamba Zimbatan, Shanju Tundu Nidinjirota.
Dene.
Taba Tundu, Shanju Tundu Nidinjir. Sanjiban, the Jendun Taba Tundu J, and that do Shanju Tundu.
Then chap. Okay, Jipa dene. Sanjay Ge Yunten. Let's go.
Jiba Dunji sent the Kumba Tone, two de Gune, Sanjila Tundu Jiba de. And Sanjiban then, Shanchula Tundu Jibukune Jacques, Chidu Shagun Majakos, Shanchula Tundu Jib, Sanjiban the Jendus, and that was Shanchundus, Shanchu Tundu Chana, Sanji Jagres, Jendung Chana Jagamares.
Okay, they don't agare. They don't agare. Chapagare.
Sanjiban the Jendus, and that was Shanchudus Nidoni.
Less so.
Sanjiban, taking Sanjibat Kandasana, Jendus, Jen Sanjan Tajik Tondos, Tom with the Marbe. And Yanda to Shanchundus, Sanjan Tajik Shanchu Tuban Duba Niro, the need Maran Dubanines and Dubanine, Jendun Dubatan, and the Shanchun Dubas.
The Shanchu Dumba around doing Yimba?
Shanchun Duba, this Hajikum to do the road.
They're around doing?
And Jendun the Silverta, Tabatun de Glutamarbe, Tabatun de Gluta, Shanchu Tundu.
Okay. So I'm just going to go through this again quickly. After you see how rare this most purposeful spirit is, so when you see how rare the spirit of enlightenment is, we see how rare the qualities of the here and the solitary realizer are, and this is even more rare and more difficult to achieve. We recognize how rare it is. You develop a desire to attain enlightenment, spurred on principally by this awareness. So it says, with regard to the two components of the spirit of enlightenment. So when we look at the quote in the Abhisama Alamkara, they're saying that there are 2 points that are made. The 2 points are, first, the development of the spirit of enlightenment, and then for the perfect enlightenment for the other's welfare. So there's this, first the development of the spirit of enlightenment, and then enlightenment for the benefit of others. So there are these 2 ideas that are happening. And I asked Rinpoche just now if one's referring to the fulfillment of one's own needs, which is achieving Buddhahood, and then fulfilling the aims of others, the fulfillment of others' needs. And he said it's not that. But the point that's being made here is that number 4 is principally referring to this first point, which is the desire for perfect, complete enlightenment, not for the aim of others. The aim isn't the component of number 4. The aim of helping others and so forth isn't what number 4 is. It's merely the desire to attain enlightenment. So there are 2 points when we look at that in Abhisama Alamkara. It's the desire to attain and perfect enlightenment and for the aim of others. So it's actually, it says it twice. It says bodhicitta, and then it says the desire for perfect enlightenment for the benefit of others. So this first bodhicitta is what we're referring to when we see here the desire to attain enlightenment. So that's what bodhicitta is. And it says, and the aim of welfare of all beings. So it's just this desire. Higher? Desire specifically itself. Like that. This desire specifically itself to achieve liberation. And in this case, this is Buddhahood, because this is the kind of liberation we're speaking of here is Buddhahood, not a Hinayana liberation, not a here or a solitary realizer liberation. We're speaking of Buddhahood. So this aim for enlightenment is what number 4 is referring to. Seeing that this is very, very rare, and then recognizing from number 4 in the previous the condition that it could be declined, then one wishes to generate it so one can achieve this perfect enlightenment. The aims of others are presented within bodhicitta, but not within this particular section. It says, without the desire to attain Buddhahood that comes from cultivating faith in a Buddha's good qualities, you cannot overcome the sense of contentment that thinks peace, nirvana alone, is sufficient to fulfill your own aims. So here one needs to get rid rid of the self-cherishing attitude in order to move to complete Buddhahood. And in order to fulfill one's own aims, one needs to get rid of the self-cherishing attitude. And it's later proven that in order to fill one's own aims, the self-cherishing attitude has to be gotten rid of. It says, the desire to attain Buddhahood on account of training in love and compassion and seeing the fulfillment of others' aims as a necessity can eradicate the sense of contentment that thinks your peace alone is sufficient to fulfill others' aims, but cannot stop the sense of contentment that thinks peace is enough for your own aims. So you can recognize that you can't, by following the lesser vehicle track, help others completely, but how do you then see that you're not helping yourself completely? So that's the point being made here. How do you see that your own aims aren't filled by this type of liberation? And it says, so when we go back, it says training in love and compassion. We look at the 7-point cause and effect for achieving the mind that aspires to enlightenment. We have these stages that lead up to it. We have recognizing all sentient beings as our mother, remembering their kindness, wishing to repay their kindness, then love through the force of attraction, and then great compassion. So these are stages which lead up to bodhicitta, or the spirit of enlightenment. And it says training in love and compassion. So these are the things that lead up to bodhicitta. Besides this desire to attain Buddhahood that comes from cultivating faiths in a Buddha's good qualities, there is no way to stop the sense of contentment that thinks your peace alone is sufficient to fill your own aims. Indeed, you do need to overcome the sense of contentment that peace alone is enough to accomplish your own welfare because. So here the points are going to be made about why your own aims are not fulfilled by this lesser liberation of a hearer and solitary realizer. So when Lama Tsongkhapa's saying you in this, he's talking to Henianists. So when he's making these statements that thinks your peace alone is sufficient, the you, this is talking to the hearer and solitary realizer practitioner. So this is who it's being focused on. This is the focus of this argument here. And it says, first of all, Hinayana practitioners who are merely liberated from cyclic existence have only a partial elimination of faults and a partial knowledge, and thus lack the perfect fulfillment of their own aims. So first of all, here our solitary realizer practitioner, foe destroyer, still has the obstructions to omniscience within his or her continuum. There's still the imprints of the afflictions that are left over, even though the afflictive obstructions have been eradicated. And because of this, so it says, have only a partial elimination of faults. So because of this, there's only a partial knowledge. So because there's still obstructions to omniscience, there is no omniscience. So there are two problems, the obstructions that are there and what those obstructions do. And those obstructions make it so one is not omniscient. So here, this is the first point. The Hinianist hasn't fulfilled his or her own aim because there's still obstructions to omniscience, and there's still not omniscience. So there is still somewhere further to go. Number two, these practitioners are liberated from the problems of cyclic existence, but not from the problems of peace. So by abiding in peace, it's almost as if they are stuck there. They are abiding in the problem, in the opponent to omniscience, basically. They're abiding in that which keeps them from fulfilling their own, keeps them stuck. This peace keeps them stuck keeps them from fulfilling their own aims. The perfect fulfillment of one's own aims, it is said, is a Buddha's embodiment of truth. So the truth body of the Buddha is what is a complete fulfillment of your own aims. And what is the truth body? The truth body can be divided into two categories. First category, which is the Buddha's omniscience, and then the second, which is the cessation of suffering within the Buddha's continuum. So one is impermanent, one is permanent, just as a side note. And we have the exalted wisdom body and the nature body is what we're speaking of. So the truth body is divided into two. And one is that the omniscience that the Buddha has, and the second is the natural nature body, which is the actual cessation of suffering, in the Buddha's continuum. The lack of cyclic existence, the elimination of cyclic existence in the continuum is one of the truth bodies that's being spoken of here. The Chuku Lapson, the Mepa Chir Dang, Deda Sipi Jupa,
Sibi Gubale,
they lepson.
Tayans,
They lepson.
She Gobale Madrisharos.
Okay. Therefore, the Kanga lapson. So the perfect. Therefore, once you cultivate faith in the good qualities of a Buddha, you will see that you must attain Buddhahood to accomplish even your own aims, let alone the aims of other. Understanding that this is important for causing you not to turn back towards the Hinayana. So here again, we find the point that's made in the Abhisama Alamkara that talks about through knowledge you do not abide in cyclic existence, but through compassion you do not abide in peace. So here we find the point to that quote from the Abhisama Alamkara of showing how one abandons peace through compassion. So among the four developments of the spirit of enlightenment explained above, the first two are not induced by compassion and love. In other scriptures and treatises, as well as there are many explanations of the development of the spirit of enlightenment as the desire to attain Buddhahood induced by just seeing the good qualities of a Buddha's embodiment of truth and embodiment of form. The determination to establish all beings in Buddhahood is also said to be the development of the spirit. So you must consider each of these two to be counted as simply developments of the spirit of enlightenment. With regard to developing a completely perfect spirit of enlightenment, however, it is not sufficient merely to have the desire to attain Buddhahood upon seeing the necessity of fulfilling others' aims. You must have the desire to attain Buddhahood that sees that it is indispensable even for your own aims. Furthermore, this intention must not neglect others' welfare, but be for others' sake as well. Because the ornament for clear knowledge talks about both the intention to attain enlightenment and the intention to accomplish others' welfare. The development of the spirit of enlightenment is the desire for perfect enlightenment for others' welfare. And I think it might actually read, the development of the spirit of enlightenment and the desire for perfect enlightenment for others' welfare. I think it would more clear, there's 2 points that are made there. It's not a one complete sentence at one point that's being made. There are 2 points that's being made. And one is at first that, in this text it's saying that one can wish to become a Buddha just by seeing these excellent qualities and by seeing the wonder of the truth body and examining it, and not even have addressed the ability to work for others' aims. But it's necessary to have this union of both, this desire to become a Buddha and also for the sake of others, because that's the only way, this twofold process, that one can achieve a complete whole realization. Whole realization. So that completes number 4, and I think we're now moving into 5. So getting back to the Jamyan Sheba's, I think, we'll find out, but I think now, because Rinpoche just said 5 when we ended that, so I think we get into 5. But let's just see, after all of that, where exactly Rinpoche will start. Rinpoche, Chiran Kabar Gutso. Ngapa. Okay, so number 5.
Yeah. Ngapa Hashibi, Senji Tombani La Ne, Shambatan Hinji, Tombamano. Hashibi, Senji Tombani said the Jen Jiganon, Jen Tombani Latin Jibi, Senji New Yorwa. Jen Jilatin Jibi Senji Je. Jen Jilatin Jibi Senji Je. Jen Tombani Latin Jibi Senji Bani Bude, what the, and then Senji Hashibi, Senji Tombani La Nes. Jen Jiganane, Jen Dominilla Denijibi Senji Nila Ne, Shambatan Hiji Jambamanalas.
The Kaviare Rimche.
Hashibi, or did the cartoon do it?
The Laran Chemo.
Knowledgeable Tengulma, soon Chuba Chidlo Chuba.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sura.
Hashibi is a Mudu,
Nashabi. Okay.
Ngabari, Hashibi Senji Dominilla Ne, Shambada Niji Jamba Manalas, Hashi, Senji Domini de Jen Jilijibi Senji Jero, Jen Domini Latin Jibi Senji Nila, and the Shambada Niji Jamba Mundus, Manalas, Jen Ji Nana, Jen Domini Latin Jibi, Senji Nila ne, Shambada Niji Jamba Manalas, Senji in a Shambada Niji Jamba Guru. Senji ina ma shi tin 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 su yong ge shaba ni je la sang ni je da shaba la den senji gu ro ta na bu sha kun ka du mu du song den sa de ha shi bi senji dong bu ni la ne shaba da ni je dong ba ma na la ta ka du bu cha nu mu du ha song ro da song ro sen sang ji ga ma ro kan ju sang ji ga je tenju da tenju ro tenju kanju pod jata kazi jiyo marbe tenju pod neja wa to se son marbe sonro de sa to sonje ka che tenju sa de tenju ro tenju ka dan tenju jen le chance sonje je kuzu dan chu ju ku yuan ten tong zang je zhang bi sonje ton de la senje de sheba Mabun Hawa dance, Sejiba Tamani and Niban Najiba Senji Tamani and Niji Tramba Shabat and Niji Tramba Manasa to Dizare. Sonro Dan, Tenju Jen Le Jan, Kanju Dan, Tenju Jen Le Jan, Sanji Kuzu Dan, Chuju Kuyin, then Tonga Zanji Trambi. Sanji Tundu la, Sanji Tuba Shawnyabi, Tundu la, Sanji do, Tijan Sanju the Sheba, Kanju Tenju Sul Mombres, Mambushi Nawatan, Senjan Tanji, Sanji la, Goba Yedan Jebans, Senjan Tanji, Sanji Salam Goba Shawnyabi, Yedan Jeban, Sanji do Somba, Nayu, Teni Rayan. Senjiba Zanji Transu Drangulas, Senji Nadamba Res, Nadamba. Senji Tanji Sanji Langoba Yedan Jeba, Senji to Somba, Teni Rere, Senjiba Zanji Transu Drangulas, Tijan Senji Drangures, Mig Nada Res, Mig Nada Tembaset, Odin Sade. Senjiba, Nadamba Sheba ne. Hashi is what Senjiba, Nadamba Sheba. Senjiba, Nadamba Sheba, Senji Nido Ni. Hashi be Senjiba Tomini la ne. Shabata Niji Jamba Manala. And Sonro da Tenju Jen Le Jan. Sanji Kuzu, Sanji Zuji Kutan. Chuju Kuyin, then Tonga Sanji, Jambi. Sanji Tundu la, Senji Sheba Mutawa, Senji Jiji, Senji Tanji, Sanji Langoba, Yedan Jeba, Senji Do, Suba Yin Hayu, Teni Rayan, Senji Batan, Transu, Senji Nadambaris, Senji Ins Lauguris, Senji Nadambaris, Nadam Transu Dang Gulas. What about Ngaba?
Then the Kagadu?
What about it?
Ngapa?
Ngaba, what about it? That robot and the Chinese at the Maleon.
Okay, that's good. Seni Gutso, okay.
Ngaba and Hashi, what is what in it? Chinese at the Tama.
Seni Ka, okay. So just now we're going to correctly the Jayan Sheba's commentary. Number 5 begins on page 24 among the 4 developments. Rinpoche read through it before, but didn't give much commentary, and the 5 begins there. So now Rinpoche will give the commentary on it, and then the 6 I have where it begins too. So I'm just going to stop. Among the four developments of the spirit of enlightenment explained above, the first two are not induced by compassion and love. So this raises a question in our mind. So when we look at how bodhicitta arises, we see that love and compassion are part of the causal factors for its arisal. So this is what we've always learned. So what's being taught here? So there's an alternative position that is presented that shows that there is another way. So there are two points that are made here. One, so I'll read through it. The first two are not induced by compassion and love. In other scriptures and treatises, as well as there are many explanations of the development of the spirit of enlightenment as the desire to attain Buddhahood induced just by seeing the good qualities of a Buddha's embodiment of truth and embodiment of form. So here there's many, it says scriptures and treatises. So the Kangjur are the scriptures, those are the pronouncements of Lord Buddha, and treatises referring to those authentic Indian commentaries. So Lama Tsongkhapa is saying in both the Kangjur and the Tanjur we find cases where people have developed this spirit of enlightenment just by gazing at the Buddha's truth and form body, just by having, well, you wouldn't see anything but the form body, but just by seeing this body, by seeing this Buddha, you induce this desire to achieve it. So it says, desire induced just by seeing the good qualities of a Buddha's seeing the good qualities of the Buddha's embodiment of truth and embodiment of form. Just as a translator's note, there's no form to the truth body, so you couldn't see it. The form body is the emanation body. So the determination to establish all beings in Buddhahood is also said to be the development of the spirit. So here, these are the 2 points that are made. First, the development of the spirit as the desire to attain, induced by just seeing the good qualities of a Buddha's embodiment of truth, embodiment of form. And then the second is the determination to establish all beings in Buddhahood is also said to be the development of the spirit. So what does this mean? There are these two points, and Lama Tsongkhapa goes on to say that these are all just parts of the spirit of enlightenment. So you must consider each of these two to be counted as simply developments of the spirit of enlightenment. So developments of the spirit. So you see these Buddha's excellent qualities of the form and the truth body, and you wish to benefit others, and this is a progression of the same actual realization. Not necessarily in that order, but it is not necessarily in that order, but that is a way this could progress. So when I said progression, it means an example of a progression. With regard to developing a completely perfect spirit of enlightenment, however, it is not sufficient merely to have the desire to attain Buddhahood upon seeing the necessity of fulfilling others' aims. So I just have to see where this keeps happening. I'm going to figure this out. Okay, so Tseni, I have to just see where number 5 ends.
goba tonga zangji chambi sanji tundu zangji machukis ane rangdun lang sanji medum rongwa tongyu tundu zang teyang jenji teng yewa ane jaba meba jenji sheduwa ane tundu nyewa shi guydes ane senji lo wadali tsang gures ngadu jenle senji ba ne jendun she yangda zubi shangchun de so wote tije senji senji den bi jong do de ngadu jen senji ba ne jen senji ta ji ge ji she do ane yangda zubi shangchun de sanji gu bon to ban de bi senji ba jen tan ji la senji ja wu res senji sang wa de wo tan ji le ja wu res senji ba ne jendun she yangda zubi shangchun de shanji ban de jendun de ni ji dun ba yanda zu shangchun de ba ne ba ni ne ju gu ne sanji gu mo to ba xiao nya be sen de lo de te jin sen ji se ge des te jin sen ji chen ni yu su chang wa de wo de de ji ja gu res
Shandun Jela ni shendun la gupa. Let's see.
Listen, may
the inji cake natsu kabiar the tseni the inji cake the kabiar the moa gogamare. I said I'm trying to find where we are in the English. I don't need more information. Okay, tseni yonsu tsupi. Jela jendun. Okay, so upon seeing this fulfilling others' aims. With regard to developing a perfectly Senyi Yonsutsupi Senche Yonsutsupa. Okay, so with regard to developing a completely perfect spirit of enlightenment, however, it is not sufficient merely to have the desire to attain Buddhahood upon seeing the necessity of fulfilling others' aims. You must, okay, so that's where number 6 begins. 5 ends at 2 to be counted as simply developments of the spirit of enlightenment. So that's where number 5 ends, and then 6 begins here. With regard to developing a completely perfect spirit of enlightenment, however, it is not sufficient merely to have the desire to attain Buddhahood upon seeing the necessity of fulfilling others' aims. You must have the desire to attain Buddhahood that sees that it is indispensable even for your own aims. Furthermore, this intention must not neglect others' welfare, but be for others' sake as well. Because the ornament for clear knowledge talks about both the intention to attain the enlightenment and the intention to accomplish others' welfare. I know that it says that, but okay. The development of this, then we have the quote from the Abhisama Alamkara, which shows that there are those 2 points that are being made. The development of the spirit of enlightenment and the desire for perfect enlightenment for others' welfare. So we find that quote, and that ends number 6, Drupatsar.
Happy New Year to
so that ends this, and please, when you leave, take some Happy New Year to everyone, and please take some of the what are these called? The name of these? Kanzi. They're fried snacks that are made specifically during times of celebration and the New Year and Dalai Lama's birthday and Buddha Shakyamuni's birthday. So please take some when you go. And we'll do the concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. And thank you all for your patience as we bring this into English for the first time. And we'll, in the future, go over it slowly again. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang Drapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All-powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. I pray for the long life of the precious Khensur Wandak, upholder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, spiritual friend who trained extensively in great philosophical texts, exceptional wisdom and perseverance. Geshe Rinpoche, Gutsi Shapi Denalang, that's Lamrim Chenmo Kala. So Rinpoche is saying, let's get bags together for everyone to take snacks home. Happy